ship. What is dying? I am standing on the seashore. A ship sails in the morning breeze and starts for the ocean. She is an object of beauty, and I stand watching her till at last she fades on the horizon, and someone at my side says, "She is gone." Gone. Where? Gone from my sight, that is all. She is just as large in the masts, hull and spars as she was when I saw her, and just as able to bear her load of living freight to its destination. The diminished size and total loss of sight is in me, not in her. And just at the moment when someone at my side says, "She is gone," there are others who are watching her coming, and other voices take up a glad shout, "There she comes!" And that is dying.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Bill Jackson. It's been my privilege to be Audrey's neighbour for almost 40 years. 9 days short, in fact, of 40 years. And I shall be paying a tribute to her a little later. And for that I'm very grateful to all who've helped me with the details. Particularly Audrey's cousin Mia, who's not with us because she's in Australia. But for now, just now, I want to thank Caroline for all her help in preparing this service, and Michael, who's doing all this wonderful audiovisual stuff at the front. And I need to introduce Morag Saunders and Tony Perry. Morag was born in the house next door to the Harris home in Bears Den, which was in the years before the road era began. And Tony was Audrey's supervisor at the Frome Citizens Advice Bureau, where Audrey worked as a volunteer for many years. In fact, Tony took over the chair of the Frome branch of MenCap when Audrey stood down in 2000. Morag.
Thank you. Hello everyone. It's a privilege to be able to stand up here today and pay tribute to Audrey, who as Bill has said, I have known for as long as I can remember. And she was a great influence in my early life. I would like to share a few personal memories with someone that I have always looked up to and respected. When I was born, Audrey and the two Davids lived next door to us in the other half of our semi-detached house in Spears Road in Bearsden, which is a suburb of Glasgow. And then around the time when the young David was about to go to school, they moved to a different house in another part of Bearsden in Lawrence Drive, but we never lost touch. In Bearsden, Audrey fitted in easily and was well liked with her good sense of humour. She had a great rapport with my dad, keeping us all entertained with constant teasing and the banter that followed. She also made lifelong friendships with the neighbours in both Spears Road and Lawrence Drive, and was affectionately known to my family as Auntie Audrey. At that time, finding good friends and support from the neighbours was important and a blessing to Audrey, having a young child and living so far away from her family. With her easygoing manner and her sociable nature, she commanded a lot of respect. And I know that she worked tirelessly for the MenCap organisation, amongst other things, during her time in Bearsden. However, it is as a devoted mother, providing the best upbringing for David, that I remember her most. The older of my two sisters and I were very much part of David's growing up process, and we would often go to Lawrence Drive for sleepovers. These visits were always great fun, and we loved visiting the house. Audrey was very house proud, and the house was always beautifully kept. Nothing was ever out of place, but it was still homely, and we always felt welcome. To us children, it was full of interesting antiques, which sat perfectly around the modern furniture, which reflected Audrey's stylish nature. This was also reflected in the clothes that Audrey wore, and I think that we were in awe of this glamorous lady that took such a keen interest in us. On these visits, Audrey made sure that we and David learnt many of the skills we needed in life. She encouraged us to help with tasks around the house and would send us off on errands to the local shops. She always made sure that David had lots of friends around and made a big effort when it came to birthday parties. And I can still vividly remember sitting in their front room playing Pass the Parcel while she stood at the record player and played the music. She also loved a picnic, and many summer weekends were spent on joint family trips to places like the river at Drumtea and Ford near Killearn or to Loch Lomond. Theatre and cinema trips also featured in these early days, and I still clearly remember with great excitement Audrey and my mum taking us kids into Glasgow to see The Sound of Music. To my delight, Audrey bought the original soundtrack to the film, and on my subsequent visits to Lawrence Drive, I would sit for hours in the front room, continuously playing the record over and over again. Audrey never got cross with me, but I do remember her very diplomatically telling me that enough was enough. And in later years, she would often remind me how cantankerous I could be as a child, but I know how lucky I was that I had Audrey around as a calming influence. As a very gentle and caring person, Audrey's nursing skills were second to none, and she was often called upon for advice and help when one of us kids were unwell or had fallen and hurt ourselves. For example, on one occasion, she had to be asked to put some eye drops into my eye because I wouldn't let my mother near my eye. And she was successful in her task, but I think that was probably because she offered me sixpence if I let her do the job. I also had great admiration for her cooking skills because she's the only person that I know that ever managed to get my mum to eat and enjoy a curry. In more recent years, Mervyn and I have been able to spend a little bit more time with Audrey and David, frequently reminiscing on these old days in Bearsden. But we have also been amazed with her efforts to embrace modern technology, as she has spent many hours on the phone with Mervyn trying to get to grips with the intricacies of her iPad, as well as looking for advice on phones and hobs and microwaves and kettles. Quite admirable for someone in their 90s. Audrey, you have been a great friend and inspiration. Thanks for all the lessons in life and the memories. You'll be missed, but certainly never forgotten. Thank you.
I first met Audrey when she was considerably older than Morag's experience of her. In fact, it was in the autumn of 1989 when I became Deputy Manager of Frome Systems Advice Bureau. Audrey had already been a volunteer there for a number of years. In fact, since 1974, she was a founder member of the Bureau. At that point, it was located in the upper rooms over a chemist shop in Bar Street in Frome. Very cramped conditions. And then we later moved to slightly less cramped conditions in St John's Cottage in the forecourt of St John's Church. Audrey was highly committed and caring advisor over those years, and many people benefited from her advice, and her presence in the Bureau was very uplifting. She was a great personality and had a great sense of humour. In the latter years there, she was part of the Wednesday team, which consisted of 5 women, one of whom, Jackie, is here this afternoon. And having worked together for a number of years, they formed close relationships. When they all retired from the CAB, they met up together for regular lunches, and I know those occasions with the Wednesday girls, as they were known, became a significant part of Audrey's social calendar. And as the parent of a daughter with profound and multiple learning disabilities, I was also involved with Audrey in her major sphere of public service. Audrey, with the support of David, her late husband, and with David Jr., set up a MenCap in Frome and District MenCap Society in the 1960s. I can't actually find out from anyone who would have known her back then the exact date. Even Jeff Banwell, who was treasurer, can't remember, but it must have been some time in the early 1960s. She invested an amazing amount of energy and time into setting up a fortnightly social club for other adults with learning disabilities. They engage in all sorts of activities. Audrey's motto was very much integration and not segregation. And I know that on one occasion they had a day trip to the House of Parliament where a group of them went up to meet their local MP. She also became a very strong advocate on behalf of individuals and families and carers. I remember being in consultative meetings with social services with her when she would speak passionately on behalf of adults with learning disability. In fact, I think I'd say she was quite a formidable figure in those environments. She could really be very assertive and get her point across. And indeed, after she'd stood down from MenCap, one of the senior managers in social services said, wow, she was really quite intimidating. I think my style was slightly different, but there was no doubt that she achieved so much for people with learning disabilities in this area, raised the profile of learning disability, and certainly influenced the development of services for a very vulnerable group of people. She also took on a national role, as for several years she was a member of the board of Royal MenCap when the actor Brian Rix was the chairman. She clearly enjoyed her regular trips to MenCap's head office in central London for meetings. By the early 2000s, Audrey felt it was the right time to stand down from chairing MenCap, and she asked me to take over from her. As I'm sure you're all aware, Audrey could be a very persuasive person, and I agreed to take over, but I was very aware that she was a very hard act to follow, and that certainly proved true. But during the course of her involvement over those so many years with the CAB and MenCap, Audrey greatly enriched the lives of many people, and by so doing she has left a tremendously valuable and enduring legacy.